Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. This is the first time we've ever had a two-part episode devoted to one book because it's so goddamn big. So last episode we looked at the more than the first half, maybe the first 2/3 of Alec, the Years Have Pants collection. My phone didn't have enough memory to record the whole thing. And also I had to go to the bathroom. So I realized that I'm going to have to make part 2, which is what you're watching now. I'm open to right where we left off. So now we're in a new book here after The Snooter, which was released, as a separate book a long time ago. We start off with A Tale of Horror by Eddie Campbell. And this is about this weird bug called the snooter, which Eddie Campbell made up. It's kind of horrifying. It's a very striking image that it's just terrifying. And this really is kind of horrific. It's obviously not really autobiographical. But one day this bug appears in Eddie Campbell's house. He's trying to swat it out of the house. And the next time he sees it, it's in his cat's mouth. But then he realizes the hand that touched the bug starts to have an infection. And look at this, it's pretty nasty looking. And it's spreading. And the last panel, we see it all on his neck. And he says, "Must warn the world." It's very weird for an Alec story. Next, we have Beware the Snooter. And now we realize the snooter is almost this metaphysical thing. A creature. It seems to be almost like a harbinger of death, or maybe death itself. And he has all these little vignettes of people. This story is all about just random people and how once they saw the snooter, their lives took a downward turn. This guy was a university professor until one day he saw the snooter, and then he just became this guy who hung out on a bench all the time, basically a hobo. He just threw his whole life away. Next, we see this Australian couple and the daughter, who seemed to be totally happy, she had a pretty damn good life. She saw the snooter, and she went home and hung herself in the bathroom. So this snooter thing is just kind of scary. After the snooter, and Eddie Campbell, and I was just going back to his autobio, talking about his youth. Apparently he was very good at violin as a teenager. And his wife Annie didn't even know. She's like, "I didn't even know you could read music." We see more about Eddie's childhood, or Alec, whichever. And he was kind of a weird kid. Kind of a bookworm, also kind of just very disengaged from his classmates. Kind of loving his solitude and his reading. And then he describes a meeting with Dave Sim. And this is Dave Sim convincing him to become a self-publisher. And it just tells this whole story how he started Eddie Campbell Comics. Of course, with lots of asides about random stuff. We still like seeing the events of his life. His 40th birthday party. And we see that he's come to terms with the snooter. Sometimes he wakes up with the snooter right in his chest and he just stares back at him. This next one's called The Foreigners. Spelt wrong. And Eddie's back in England, and he wants to visit his old school. His wife is all like, "I thought you hated that place." But Eddie Campbell's such an intellectual. Alec is such an intellectual. He just remembers they had these amazing busts on the arches of the colonnade of a school, and he just wants to see them again because he's been reading about them in books. Apparently, they're an architectural thing. Sorry, I couldn't think of a better word. I love this little wash drawing of the station wagon. I love the way he just throws in so much stuff, like history. A couple panels would be about the history of something. Then I'll talk about his kids. And then I'll talk about his wife. We see he goes back to his school. And he hears all the voices. Homer, Aristotle, Michelangelo, because the busts are of all the great thinkers. But it's the voices coming out of them are his shitty teachers. Submissions must be in neat double-spaced type. Do the art in your own time, Alec. Get academic qualifications to fall back on. Next we have On a Street Where I Lived. And this is more about his childhood. And this is kind of interesting, see what he was like when he was a kid. He definitely seemed to turn out differently than his childhood would lead you to believe, because he was kind of withdrawn. All he wanted to do was art. Didn't really pay attention to any other subject in school. Well, I mean, if it wasn't the arts. And he talks about his downwardly mobile school career, but he didn't care. He could take more art classes. That's all he cared about. Here's another one of those like childlike drawings he does. I don't know why I really like the way they break up his pages, you know, having those every now and then. I love this little homage to, you know, reading about American comics. Well, all kinds of art from all over the world. And he has this almost fantasia where it's like Monet and Renoir are painting boats. Susan Sontag is telling passerbys about an art movement. In the Coffee A Go-Go, Leanne Kirby's Bertrand the Poet is reading his phone bill. I think that's a direct reference to a scene in the Fantastic Four where they're making fun of beatniks. While in The Silver Spoon, Gwen and Mary Jane are dancing to the jukebox. How he wishes he could be in that world. These English kids in the 60s, all their comics were black and white. And England was still kind of recovering, you know, 50s, 60s. It was still a gray place post-World War II. And so America just looks so colorful and flashy. Just from reading the comics, you'd be like, wow, things are in color in America, and they're more exciting. I've read so many interviews with English cartoonists and comic book artists and writers, and they all seem to say that. Like, the Marvel comics were so much more exciting. Even the DC ones. Here's more things about him being a young artist. And we see him growing up. This is pretty chronological. Now he's like going off to college. He's got his first girlfriend. He talks about coming in his trousers on a park bench with her. Almost looks like a Elvis Costello wannabe when he was younger. There's an interesting story about how Alec's brother basically started going to therapy. He said, Dad, my therapist said, you didn't hug me enough. That's the root of my problems. And Alec's like angry with him. He's like, you fucking sad sack pansies. Boo fucking who? You can't blame everything on your father. But the father does hug the brother. And now we see more flashbacks to when he was a little kid. And, talking about his dad. His dad seemed pretty aloof and cold. The Magus' house pride. This is all about Alan Moore, a visit to Alan Moore's house. So this is after Alan Moore is like a millionaire, or pretty rich. His house is all tricked out. He's imported all these tiles and amazing antiques and There's a little swamp thing, the Parliament of Trees cameo. I like Alan Moore as the swamp thing here, his roots going into the ground. He talks about Alan Moore's burgeoning, interest in magic. And a lot of things about Alan Moore's house and his kids. It's pretty nice insider baseball if you're a comic geek like me. Here's running a publishing house out of the front room. This is Alec talking about his business. And he's pretty much working for him, mailing shit out. He's got all these assistants now. Seems like he's got a nice little cottage industry going on here. Mainly from selling the From Hell books. I think he was the co-publisher of that with Top Shelf. Another Sleepless Night. And it's a really good cat there. Looks photo referenced. This is just about him, continuing what we just read. Making comics, making love to Annie. Just being a dad. Dealing with his cat. I like how a dead face, Bacchus, shows up in his kitchen. And so does the Snooter. So from now on, the Snooter will be depicted as this almost supervillain, almost like a ridiculous Batman villain from the early 60s. That's the Snooter now. And it seems more and more the Snooter is just representing death. So he's having a conversation with Bacchus and the Snooter, his creations. This, Eddie Campbell's style is so much different than those first stories you can see. Like, most of those things don't have close-up. Sorry, most of those comics, there's not many close-ups like this. He's all kind of like at a distance, which I think, covered up his some of his inadequacies as an artist. He's not the best illustrator in the world. And sometimes these faces just look a little, I don't know, like not quite there. They're not terrible, but he's really good at doing some stuff, though. So here's the Snooter trying to convince him that drinking's bad for him. Seems like everyone, a lot of people have been suggesting it to Alec recently, his doctor. He pulls the mask off the Snooter, and it's Mr. Dry, who I guess is like a teetotaler type. Mr. Dry represents the part of human society which presumes to know what is best for its fellows. Yeah, just as the Snooter symbolizes the dark, encroaching terrors of the night. I love this idea of him meeting Bacchus. One day I'll look at those. They've got 2 volumes of all the Bacchus stories they published as well. Really great stuff. Here's the Visitation, or just Visitation. It's about Neil Gaiman. Kind of going on tour with him as he does his little charity tours where he recites poetry for the CBLDF. And just a little character sketch of Neil Gaiman. He's hanging out with his kids. Neil Gaiman seemed like an alright guy at the time. He seemed really like a sweetie, but I guess things are different now. So his wife has been on the phone, like whenever Alec leaves the room, he's like, "What the hell's going on? Is that your secret friend again?" And she's like, "Fine, it's a surprise." And I guess Neil Gaiman sent a check, so like $150 to buy Alec a really fancy bottle of wine. And she breaks down crying. And Alec doesn't even seem to care. He's just picking out his wine from this book of wines. This is weird. He has a wine bottle collection in his kitchen. He's always talking about that. He just keeps the best ones that have a good memory for him. Lots of comics about drinking wines in here. Here's football. Here's another one about him being a little kid. For such an introverted artist type, it seemed like he was pretty good at soccer. This one's called Ouch. Another story about him when he was a kid. And he got in an accident. Ended up in the hospital. But that's where he discovered Marvel Comics. The kid in the bed next door, next to him, was reading Strange Tales. And then we see some cutout panels of Jack Kirby art, because that just blew him away. He liked most of the American comics, but when he saw Jack Kirby, it's really interesting. Like, even as a little kid, you know, Alec was like, he could discern the artist styles, even though if they didn't sign it. He just really was almost like a little comic scholar. That's a great panel by Kirby. This one's called The Fan. And this is about him meeting Will Eisner. And he's kind of tongue-tied. Imagining the Creative Life. This is more of his history as an artist. Everyone's telling them you gotta be a graphic designer if you want to make money. The Creative Life. More of that kind of stuff. Thinking about his art. This is, as you can see, this is like what his comics have become now. 2 to 3 page or sometimes 1 page stories. So much different than those, you know, the King Canute crowd and the ones after that, the early ones, where they're like long, sprawling things that almost felt more like life. Just things happen. They just keep happening. Maybe it doesn't have a first act, second act, third act, like drama. It's every days just flow into each other. And now we're just getting little interludes, little anecdotes from his life. They're still pretty clever and fun. Eddie Campbell's a great way, just the way he looks at the world. It seems like every day for him is just, he finds something amusing in the world. And he shares it with us. The Chair. Like I said, guys, I can't really get into most of these too much. I'm just going to show off the art for most of them because I still got a long way to go. This one's called Sexy. A funny little incident in their family life. Grooming Yaki's arse. Their cat had a piece of grass coming out of his butthole. Pets. Confiscation. Lots of cute little ones about their kids. And then we have Wallyhood, which is Eddie Campbell's experience in Hollywood, dealing with the whole From Hell movie. Kind of interesting to get this behind the scenes look of that kind of whirlwind. But he definitely has more money coming in, so he can actually be able, buy nice things for his wife. They can waste money on more wine. This is the court sketchers. About he gets a little temporary job as a court sketcher because his good buddy couldn't make a few gigs. Pete Mullins, who was Eddie's assistant on many Bacchus stories. And he makes it seem very interesting. Kind of a weird job. It's very old-timey, it seems. I think they now allow cameras into courtrooms. Or maybe they don't all the time. So you still need courtroom sketchers. Here's another story about him. I like this little parody of Bob Kane's first Batman. Instead of a bat flying through the window, though, it's the snooter. And basically now we see the origin of this supervillain snooter. Look at this very like Sienkiewicz-like drawing here. Doesn't look like Eddie Campbell. And we see the snooter go into Alec McGarry's bed, take the sheet off and stick his finger up his butt. It's so weird. But then when he takes off his mask, he is Alec McGarry. I'm not quite sure what they're trying to tell us here. Oh, and then Jack the Ripper shows up in his room, as depicted in From Hell, Dr. Gull, and he stabs him in the chest, runs away. He runs into the bathroom, takes off some mask. It's Alec McGarry again. So I don't know if it's some comment about how like Alec creates all of his own problems. He doesn't seem like that kind of guy though. This is more about From Hell. How actually, it's almost like lost panels from Hell. Talking about making the movie. This one's called Voodoo. Kind of different just by how much black is on this page. It's pretty rare for Eddie Campbell. This one's called The Fan. I can't even read this. Oh, Money. That's a pretty cool logo. Hey, I'm trying to get some work done. He has a lot of strips like this because, you know, he's got to work at home. He's an artist and his kids are always bugging him. Here's him talking about Zipatone. He basically ran out because Zipatone got really, I think it basically went out of business. Guys were hoarding Zipatone. He's using the odds and ends here just to make a dumb-looking collage. He says he finally found some in some out-of-the-way shop, but it was all these stupid patterns that he would never use, ever. More court sketching stuff. More domestic stuff. God, there's a lot more court sketchers than I remembered. I guess he had the job for more than just a little while. Dr. Doolittle. Talks about their pets. I want to see Danny Gray. This is him just reminiscing all the incidents in which someone called him a bastard. Bastards I have been called. This one's called Minesweeping. Hey, it's Vincent Vega. I didn't even notice that when I was reading it. I guess I breezed over that panel. This is talking about I think they're called like the Loony Party in England. The Monster Raving Loony Party. It's a joke political party, but they've been around for like 30 years, I think. Just like satirical political party. I didn't even mention this. This whole thing is called the classification of stuff. That's what the past... Wait, let me see here real quick. Well, it says classification of stuff 3, but maybe I missed 2 and 1. Maybe one of these strips was that. This is just an excuse for Eddie Campbell to go off and talk about anything he wants to. This next one's Worship. More Alan Moore. So he's talking about religion here. He's talking about the millennium. These comics were all made around like the turn of the millennium. Next, we have another tour comic where Eddie's going on a huge tour of the world, visiting comic conventions. And there's going to be many one-page strips. He's a really good tour guide for us. He tells us just all the weird things he sees in every country. Interesting anecdotes about people he meets. But then the small frustrations of life, like, waiting for your luggage at the baggage carousel. This sounds like a lot of fun. Getting feted across the world. Because by this point, by 2000, or 1999, he's a pretty well-known in the comics world, especially after From Hell, so he's kind of a celebrity, and he's getting treated as such. He was in Spain. Here's an evening with the Magus. That's what he calls Alan Moore. This one's a very strange strip, just describing clouds, but also tying it in with the pot smoke that Alan Moore there's wafting through his house like clouds. Camillus Cirrus. This one's about the millennium, the big millennium party, New Year's Eve. Here's the dog whisperer. And now we're introduced to Danny Gray, and now he's not calling him that. Now he's just calling him by his real name. His name's Bob. And it seems like he hasn't changed much. Well, he's definitely settled down. He's not as wild. Still seems like he's got a big heart. And now we flash back to the young friends, Danny Gray and Alec. It's interesting how he's just calling him Bob now. So we get to see more of their crazy young years. We're back to the world tour here. I guess he went on this tour with Chris Cajero. He was kind of his manager for this tour, booking things, arranging transportation. And he kind of describes Chris Cajero as a kind of interesting guy, just a very, I don't know, just a clean-cut, very organized person who's like pretty miraculous in how he takes care of Alec on his tour. More comic conventions, partying. He wins an Ignatz Award, which is basically a brick. Next one's Eternity. It's a nice panel of Jack the Ripper there. So he's back from his tour. And then he just gives us a whole history of Auld Lang Syne. Because here's the actual party for the millennium. And of course, everyone's singing it. And he gives us this whole long history about the author. And then he's watching the TV late into the night, watching how the world celebrates the millennium. Mick's Grave New World. I gotta start going faster, guys. Like I said earlier, in the first episode, I can't tell you all the plots here, and it does seem very mundane, these little anecdotes I'm conveying to you. But it really is just like, he's just a really witty writer, and there's just all these kind of charming little things in almost every, 10 on a page. He's just really good at observing interesting things in life. Here's the Top Shelf Boys, Brett Warnock and Chris Cajero. And now here's more Wally Hood stories. This one's called In Wally Hood. This one jumps all over the place, all through his life. Snooter makes another appearance. This one's Monty the dog, about their new dog. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but the kids really wanted the dog. Very typical of this, comics about dog owners. He named his dog Monty after this comic character, Monty Zoomer. I don't know if he's an Australian thing. I've never heard of him. So more of these 1 or 2 pagers where his dog's being a pain in the ass. And then he just has this little parable. This has nothing to do with the story. Well, I guess the overall theme of it. It's quite a good story. Every year in this little village, at the end of a certain evening, everyone wraps up their cares in a bundle and place them around the village fountain. Then they retire to their abodes free of all that worried them. The next day, the Burgermeister's official appear, and they basically are going to redistribute the bags of worry, so everyone will have new cares. It'll promote cohesion in the community. However, in the morning each year, just before dawn, all the villagers steal out early to the fountain to make certain of getting back their bundle of cares. That's a great little story. Alec arguing with his father-in-law. Look at that weird drawing here. That's him representing how he feels when he's drunk. I totally know this feeling. Drunkenness in which the point at which we know we've drunk too much, alas, corresponds exactly to the point at which we lose the will to do something about it. I like this angry little strip. Who said everyone's entitled to their opinion? And he just really ends up punching one of these people for their stupid opinions. Bastards Under the Sea. Here's some more of his little childlike drawings. This is just a little biological lesson about weird fish. Of course, it tells a moral. This is him in Paris, going to that cemetery, that famous cemetery where all famous authors and musicians and writers are buried. Here's another Wally Hood. This is Wally Hood ending. And he gets to walk the red carpet for the From Hell premiere. But this is right after 9/11. Then Jack the Ripper shows up and takes off his mask as the snooter. And then Eddie Campbell turns it into storyboards. Kind of a fun idea. And this last page is just Eddie and Annie, I guess, are making love. She's like, why'd you stop? He's just, all of a sudden, he's kind of hit by a worry. And they're pretty dumb things. His wife kind of mocks him. Now, apparently that comic character that I showed you earlier, the Monty, and he wrote it, he actually appears in the story, this creator named Bunny Wilson. He was a hoax that I should have pointed it out, but he talks about meeting this old cartoonist Bunny Wilson. Turns out it was a total hoax. In I think DV magazine, the anthology, they even took a mock funeral picture of Bunny Wilson's death. They got all of his friends got dressed up in black and went to the cemetery. It's a pretty elaborate hoax. Now we have fragments, and this is a project that Eddie gave up on, that Eddie Campbell gave up on. It's pretty interesting. This is definitely showing us where Eddie Campbell would go in the new millennium. A lot of his books are very much like this, just lots of information, almost like a really interesting article that's illustrated. So he basically wanted to do this huge book called The History of Humor. Chapter 1, Them Funny Foreigners. And of course, because it's Eddie Campbell, we see Alec first just talking about writing the book. So it's, his life. And then he starts talking about all these examples in medieval architecture and ancient Roman stuff of basically a lot of the humor is based on the buttocks. I love this character here. This is from 1901, showing the English king in a French magazine. His face is a buttocks. I like this here how he takes a canto from Dante and then puts Hieronymus Bosch's art to it and turns it into a comic strip about hell. More Bosch. And he gives, on the side, he gives all annotations, what he's copying or reproducing. Gilray, even talking about Chaucer. So there's so much ass humor back then. People just thought your ass was very funny. This is kind of amazing. This says 1550s. Look how interesting this artist is. It totally looks like a comic artist. I've never seen art like that from that era. This one's 1600, 1622. Really interesting. Love to see more by this guy. Roman Emperor statue. George Grosz. I'm not sure how to say that name. Gross. And just talking about all these examples of humor. Chapter 2, The Feast of Topsy-Turvy. So, of course, that's another thing about humor. Back then, it was flipping things. So, like one day of the year, the king will act like a beggar, and they'll make some lowly beggar the king for a day. Talking about Greek myths. So it's just the whole idea of flipping the situation. In Rome, I think one day a year, the masters would serve their slaves. They'd wait on them in an elaborate feast. Some of these seem downright sacrilegious, where the church had to clamp down on it. It's almost like Mardi Gras, like, we have to do Lent, so we're gonna go fucking crazy. And so it seems like they had a lot of festivals like that. They basically gave them license to do things they wanted to do, but saying it was all like, but this is whatever. It fits in with the religion. But eventually the church authorities were like, no, guys, you're just being sinners. You're just sinning. There's this building that was designed to look like it was picked up and put upside down. It's in Orlando, Florida. I've never heard of that. Here's chapter 3, Marginalized. I kind of like when Eddie Campbell does this gray tone art. Like I said earlier, it reminds me of David Lloyd. So here's another kind of topsy-turvy thing. There's lots of examples in medieval art, illuminated manuscripts of rabbits hunting humans or dogs fighting rabbits. Just basically flipping things on its ear. Cows eating humans. Man, Eddie Campbell's one well-read motherfucker. He just brings in so many examples. They talk about, in Braveheart, when the Scottish soldiers bare their asses to the enemy. Once again, the ass is a very potent form of satire. Here's a lot of the weird kind of sculptures that are on cathedrals back then. And they don't seem very pious. We see this little monkey beastie with a huge cock, people fornicating. I guess they justified it as like, oh, we're trying to scare the bad spirits or something. But they're all over. Look at this water spout. It's someone bending over it so the water comes out of his butthole. These are kind of fascinating. I would love to see these in person. But I guess people, that was their idea of humor. Talks about meeting Sergio Aragonés and the way he draws in the margins of Mad Magazine all these decades. And it's almost like an illuminated manuscripts where they fill the margins with all these little drawings. I kind of like this interesting drawing here. Then Eddie Campbell, or Alec, I should say, has a crisis. He's lost his sense of humor. Almost from studying humor. He's thought about it too much. He's dissected it too much. And now the corpse is growing cold. And he's having problems finding humor like he used to. Here's Eddie Campbell, the graphic novelist. This is very much that like wash tone style. The complicated demise of Robert Johnstone. This is just Eddie Campbell educating us on some cool story about a guy who they couldn't hang, didn't die. And now this is The Years Have Pants, which obviously the book is named after. This is like, I believe, 35 pages. This is all new. This has never been reprinted. It was made between 2006, 2008, a year before the book came out. And this is just Eddie Campbell totally just jumping around, telling us various little random stuff. We can see now his hair is white. I think I met him around, well, I met him before this, but his hair was white when I met him. So now that we get an old Danny Gray story. A cute little story about his kid. Back when his first kid was very young. So it's kind of fun, just like one-pagers. I think they're all one-pagers. They're just totally scattered from all parts of his life. An Alan Moore anecdote. When his son was young, they go on a father-son day. Eddie Campbell has this, or I should say Alec, has a friend named Chalky White, which I'm pretty sure is a pseudonym. I don't know if that has anything to do with Chris Ware's character, Chalky White. If it's a reference to it, he doesn't really make it clear. The day I was mistaken for an author. Apparently they switched the photos in this newspaper, and there's this writer that they kept using Eddie Campbell's picture. These are all pretty fun. But I gotta say, I really miss his early autobio, where he just, the pages just spun out. Spinning yarns like a silkworm that never ended. And these are just cute little stories, It's almost like something Irma Bombeck would write about, like, oh, isn't that weird when this happens in your family? But he's pretty, I think he's more clever than Irma Bombeck. Bathing the dog. He has a fun, absurdist take to his autobio. He'll just throw in some silly thing like that. He's turned into a hunchback. I guess, though, that's like when you get older, there's a lot more mundanity in your life, or at least it feels like it. Everything seems way more exciting when you're younger, and that's what is, the King Canoe crowd. every day seems like this crazy adventure. But then, you know, you're married, you got kids, you're getting old. And it's just like, okay, all I got to really talk about is these little incidences of my life. But I still get the sense that Eddie Campbell looks at life like, just is always looking at life as material. And it's a endlessly fascinating world. I guess they were gonna make a TV show out of The Fate of the Artist, one of his books. So I was talking about that experience. Showing off some things from his life, mementos. I like the way he draws the snooter there. And the last thing he shows is the gift-wrapped Ignatz Award, the gift-wrapped brick, which they use as a doorstop. And then we see it zing as if Ignatz threw it. And that's the end. So kind of not much of a, kind of a whimper instead of a bang. But still, all in all, just like really enjoyable stuff. I mean, what was this? Basically 640 pages of comics for the most part. And I wasn't bored at all. I was just loving every page turn. I was like, what is Eddie Campbell going to tell me about now? I like this picture from 2007. This is from that TV show. This was a promo shot. And I love when they do this. He gives us all the original publication information chronologically, where these things were serialized, where they were published. And so I really like that. Very interesting end paper here. Looks like melted wax or something. There's that same picture in color. Little blurb about him. And there's the back cover. I did want to point out, like, if you guys have watched this channel, I'm not very erudite. I don't talk that good. But this summed it up so perfect. I wish I had, like, could think things like this. The way they describe these Alec stories is, you know, brilliantly observed, profoundly expressed. Eddie's outlandish fantasies and metafictional tricks convert life into art while staying fully grounded in their own absurdity. At every point, the author's uncanny eye for irony and wry self-awareness makes even the smallest occasion into an opportunity for wit and wisdom. Alec is a masterpiece of visual autobiography. So these are all things I share the sentiment, but I just couldn't put them into such succinct words. I'm just kind of saying a lot and saying, hey, look at that. That's a nice panel. But that's how I feel about Alec. It really is unlike any other autobiocomic and maybe even autobiography, any kind of prose or comics. So that's it, guys. It took me 2 episodes, and hopefully my battery or my storage space won't run out. Thanks for watching. I hope I wasn't too boring because it's kind of hard to convey these strips. But I at least want to show off all the art. And once again, Alec, The Years Have Pants, a life-size omnibus. Hopefully these are still in print. You should get one. And highly recommend it. So thanks for watching, guys. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.